So our theme this afternoon is La Cultura Moves Markets. The Latino economy isn't emerging, we are here. That means recognizing that we're not a future opportunity, we are a present force. Our culture, our leadership, and our economic impact are shaping industries, driving markets, and building communities right now. The voices you'll hear today will inspire you, challenge you, and hopefully remind you that we each have a role in shaping what comes next, not just for our clients or our businesses, but for our communities and the legacy we're creating together. And to help you follow along, you'll find a QR code on your table. So go ahead and take just a second and scan that. It has today's agenda and speaker info and some amazing resources that we'll be highlighting throughout the program. With that, Adade, let's jump into some special acknowledgments and recognitions of the people and partners who have helped make today and this chapter what it is.
Already. So I'm back again. I can feel the energy in this room. And this event is not only possible, it's powerful because of people who are behind this event. Please, let's show some love to Rick Aguilar and Aguilar Production. CD Lending. And Keller Williams Bilingual. Now, to our annual sponsors who support our work year-round. They see what NAHREP's mission is. They believe in us, and they like our programming, and they want us to be successful. That's why they give us money every year. So now, let's show some love to our annual sponsors. Pillar Title, Edge Mortgage, Summit Mortgage Corporation, Huntington Bank, Spacecrafting, Minnesota Association of Realtors, Bank of America, Wintrust Mortgage, 4 Point Construction, formerly Advantage Construction Company, Lake Area Mortgage, Bremer Bank, Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, U.S. Bank, Movement Mortgage, American Family, All National Bank, Associated Bank. Thank you. Now, I want to do something very special. Before we move forward, we want to take a moment to honor the shoulders that we are standing on today. I'd like to invite all founding members and past board members of NAHREP to the stage. If you are in the room, please come forward. Now, 7 years in the making, and here is where we are. A chapter that is respected, a chapter that is thriving, and a chapter that is gonna do more. Please put your hand together for these wonderful, wonderful, inspiring leaders. Now, I'd love to hear your name and what your affiliation with the chapter was, or what capacity have you helped the chapter in the past. What is Rico?
So your
Hello, hello. Okay. My name is Estefania Borns, and I served NAHREP Twin Cities for 4 years, took a break, and now I'm back as the vice president.
I'm Martha Balek. I was one of the founders of NAHREP. So I started, 7 years ago? And then I came back this year.
I am Adriana Martinez, past president of NAHREP Twin Cities, and I served for years in the board in different capacities and marketing events, and I love it and I want to come back.
We have to interrupt for just a moment here and also acknowledge that if you're here today, it's probably because you got a phone call from Adriana. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for answering my calls.
Isaac Contreras, past president, and currently have the distinction of alumni. So I have fun with that.
Marina Aguirre Anthony. I was a past board member for 4 years. I was a director of education and sponsorship.
Hello, everybody. I'm Guille Garza. I was one of the founders with Ed Luna for this chapter 8 years ago. We started in 2018 working for the whole year until 2019 we launched the chapter. I was president for 2 years, then I was past president, then I was, I don't know what else, but then I was governmental affairs until I was my time to lead and led everybody to get the leadership, which you can see they are being awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Guille. And hold up for 1 second. Guille Garza, back-to-back Realtor of the Year.
Hi everyone, Angel Edesma. Yeah, like Guille said, I am as well one of the co-founders when Guille, and we had to give credit to Ed Luna, which he's not here, and a few other ones that started this chapter, and then Twin Cities like many years ago, like Eric Montes, Robert Ricardo, JP, Palais, and a few other ones that they are not here. But all together, we, when we started, it was a vision that we had to create, like we form now today, and it has been amazing, and to partner with amazing professionals, and yeah, really happy to help, So, yeah, keep going.
Hola a todos. My name is Wendy Heras, and I've been part of NAHREP for about 3 years. I was the marketing director for the last couple years. And thank you all for coming, and big applause for everyone up here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for what you've poured into this chapter and making this chapter what it is today. You may have a seat. Every year, NAHREP put out a list together to show the professionalism and how realtors are performing. It's called the top 50 or the top 150. So the top 250 of the top producers. And in Minnesota, we have a few top 50s. And we even have one member of NAHREP Twin Cities who has been in the top 2. This year, she is the top 2 producer of the entire nation. Realtor, because one of the NAHREP 10 principles is being good is not enough. You have to be great. You have to be better. You have to work on your skills, get better every single day. Just being good is not enough. Give it up for our top 250 top producer. You can stand up so we can see who you are. Okay, now let's have fun. Let's turn our attention to our next leaders, the leaders that will guide us and take us through the journey in 2025. So please, if you are on the board, 2025, please come forward. Something was said earlier. I don't know if you were taking note. No drama. Good. So now, to formally install this board, we are deeply honored to welcome someone whose leadership has shaped this movement from the very beginning. As a co-founder and CEO of NAHREP, Gary Acosta has not only built a nationwide platform for Latino for advancement, he has also challenged us to lead boldly, build wealth, and also carry this mission with pride. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Gary Acosta to swear us in.
Thank you. You know, one thing my co-founder, Ernie Reyes, used to tell me is you can never say thank you enough. And organizations like this, chapters like this, events like this don't happen on their own. They happen because you have dedicated people who are sacrificing their time, sharing their energy and their vision for all of us. So it's my pleasure to install you all as board members of this chapter. So please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name, promise to faithfully and honorably serve as director of the, is it Minnesota or Twin Cities chapter?
Twin Cities.
Sorry, Twin Cities chapter of NAHREP. To protect and fulfill the integrity of the organization, its bylaws, and public purpose, and to advance our mission of sustainable Hispanic homeownership. So help me God. By the power vested in me, I now install you as directors of this great, great chapter. Congratulations. Thank you.
All right. It's official. Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you for your leadership, your vision, and your presence here with us today. Being sworn in by someone who has built so much, not just for NAHREP, but for our entire community, is pretty incredibly meaningful. 11:25. It's my birthday. You remind us that what we're doing here in Minnesota is part of something bigger, and we're ready to carry that mission forward with purpose. So hi again, everyone. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Julissa Fuentes Roberts, and I am humbled to serve as this year's NAHREP Twin Cities chapter president. I stand before you today as a proud Latina, born and raised here in Minnesota. I have a thoughtful and supportive gringo dad from North Dakota. He's here in the room with us. And I have a strong and determined Peruana mom. Growing up, I often felt like I had to qualify my Latina identity. I'd tell people about my baptism and First Communion in Peru, about my college years there, almost like I needed to prove I was Latina enough. But what I've come to understand, and what NAHREP has helped me embrace, is that my story is just one of many colorful and uniquely mixed personal identities that make up what it means to be Hispanic. Some of us speak Spanish fluently. Some of us call ourselves no sabo kids. Some were born in places like Bolivia, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico. Where are you? There we go. Others were born in California, or right here in Minnesota. Some of us, Colombia, obviously. You know, I knew that was gonna happen. Some of us celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and some of us, let's be honest, thought Cinco de Mayo was Mexican Independence Day. There's no single version of Latinidad, and that's exactly what makes our community so powerful. We have the privilege of being de aquí y de allá, of living between cultures and claiming both. And that privilege comes with responsibility. We're not navigating between two worlds. We're shaping one that reflects all of us. When we talk about Latino unity, we're not asking anyone to be the same. We're just asking each other to show up, to hold space for all of the different ways that we live and love our culture. That's what NAHREP means to me. It's a place where that duality is celebrated and where we're stronger because of our diversity, not in spite of it. So here's why that unity matters, not just emotionally, but economically. Latinos are not just shaping the future, we are the future. We've heard that today. From 2022 to 2023, Latinos accounted for 97.5% of all US population growth. We have the highest labor force participation rate in the country. Hispanic-owned businesses have grown at double the national average in the last decade. Our community added more than 462,000 new homeowner households in 2023 alone, bringing us to nearly 9.8 million Hispanic homeowners nationwide, which is the highest ever recorded. These aren't just stats. We've heard them today. They're signals. Signals that Latinos are driving homeownership, small business creation, and economic expansion at every level. And yet, while our nation sees growth, here in Minnesota, we've recently seen a net decline in Latino population, and we have to acknowledge that. Over 8,300 fewer Hispanic residents in just the past year. That's not just migration, it's a message. It tells us that we need to create better systems of belonging, economic opportunity, and cultural affirmation, right here in our own backyard. Because when families don't feel seen, they go elsewhere. And Minnesota can't afford to lose that potential, so it's an economic issue. So let's be clear, investing in Latino prosperity is not a charity, it's a strategy. It's how we grow our housing market. It's how we fuel our small business economy. It's how we build Minnesota where children see leaders who look like them, not just in cultural centers or DEI panels, but in boardrooms, city halls, and on the front lines of innovation and entrepreneurship. I mean, look at the people in this room. Doesn't that give you chills? When we support the Latino community with intentionality, we don't just strengthen Latino families, we strengthen Minnesota. Because when Latinos win, Minnesota wins. So we're not alone in this vision. NAHREP has shown us what's possible when we unite. So we're gonna play a short video and then Steffi's gonna bring the message home for us. It might sound a little familiar for those of you who are here this morning, but hopefully it drives it home.
If the narrative about Latinos is that we're a community that's full of problems, immigration problems, financial problems, and problems with the law, why would we be surprised that accessing capital has been next to impossible for us? In December, I had the opportunity to speak at the United Nations. I shared a story about how I was part of raising $100 million for Latitude Ventures, a venture capital fund that invests exclusively in Latino-led startups. During that process, I got to see what people with money really think about Latinos from a business standpoint. I also learned that even though Latinos are 20% of the population, we only get 1% of the venture funding. I learned that there are roughly $72 trillion of capital floating around the globe, and a relatively small number of people control that capital. And those people have a lot of pressure on them to invest that money in something that's going to give them a good return on their investment. So I started to ask myself, why would these people want to invest in a community that's full of problems? See, we weren't asking for a gala sponsorship or something small like that. We were asking for $10 million of investment capital, and that's a whole different ballgame. Now, conversely, if the narrative is positive, amazing things can happen. I look at the Indian community. Indians from India, they represent less than 1% of the US population. IBM, Google, Microsoft, Pepsi, Twitter, they all have Indian CEOs. Now, is it possible that Indians are just better than everyone else and there are no Latinos good enough to run big companies? Or is it more likely that a positive narrative has emerged that Indians are pretty good at running large companies? The Latino brand matters. It matters in terms of our career prospects. It matters in terms of our access to capital. And it matters in terms of how our children are treated in their schools. Over the next few weeks and months, I'm going to go pretty deep on this issue and other factors that relate to us in a big way. Capital, wealth, money, cash. I'm going to get pretty frank about certain realities that we all need to come to terms with. But the good news is the future is really bright if we get a few things right. The game is moving quickly, guys, so buckle up, and thank you for joining.
Wow. I know we have Gary here, but that video gave me chills. And it hit home, didn't it? When I first watched it, I felt a little bit of mix of pride and urgency. Because it's not a compelling message, it's a mirror. It's happening right now. The line that struck me the most was, if the narrative about Latinos is that we're a community full of problems, immigration problems, financial problems, legal problems, then we shouldn't be surprised when access to capital is nearly impossible. In that video, we heard that $72 trillion in global capital is controlled by a few decision makers, and yet only 1% of venture capital goes to Latino-led startups, even though we are 20% of the US population. Think about that. That's a whole different ballgame. And it requires a whole different kind of brand and a whole different kind of mindset. If you were here earlier today, Gary talked about this. But I wanted to share something. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Estefania Borns, and I am deeply honored to be serving as the Vice President in our Twin Cities chapter. And I wanted to share a story, like I said, but I want to ask everybody to entertain me for 3 seconds. Close your eyes. Really, close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And I want you to picture what success looks like. Think about it. What is success sounds like to you? What does it taste like? Can you taste success? How does it make you feel? Now you can open your eyes. When I was thinking of all of that, I added a little bit of Latino sazon to it. Loud voices, full of passion, extravagant outfits, dripping in pride, a community bursting in color, culture, and joy. That's what I experienced at my very first NAHREP National Conference. For the first time in my life, I saw something that I'd never seen before. I was in a room full of Latino excellence. sorry about that. People who looked like me, who spoke like me, who walked with purpose and pride. They were running million-dollar businesses, shaping industries, mentoring others, and leading at the highest levels. And here's what changed me. They weren't the exception, they were a standard. In that moment, I realized something profound. Other people aren't blocking your path, they're lighting it. That entire room was full of reminders that the life I wanted wasn't only possible, but it was happening in front of me. I just hadn't seen it up close yet. See, for a long time, I saw other success as a sign that I was behind. If someone launched a business before me, well, they beat me to it. I guess that's not for me anymore. But NAHREP taught me something different. It showed me that other people's achievements aren't a threat. They're a preview. They're not taking anything from me. They're not taking anything from us. They're giving us the blueprint. You're not playing against other people in this life. We're playing with them. And when we finally see comparison as a teacher, as a guide, we stop shrinking and we start growing. We start learning. And it is very important that we all commit to start rebranding the Latino brand. If you know me, you know I love my NAHREP events. And at our last regional conference in Denver, Gary said something that we'll never forget. We Latinos, we are a sleeping giant. Think about that. And he's right. Latinos drive 3.4 trillion in GDP, and we're the fastest growing group of home buyers, the most entrepreneurial and one of the most loyal markets in the country. But too often, we're talked about instead of talked to. That's why NAHREP matters. It is not just a network, it's a national force, shaping conversations in policy, businesses, and wealth. And trust me, we're just getting started. Unity doesn't mean we all think the same. It means we all move with a shared purpose. And when we build each other up, we build a brand, a reputation that travels in boardrooms, in capital meetings, and legislations. This is about positioning ourselves and each other as a community that delivers, not just culturally, but professionally, not just locally, but nationally. Because when we let each other lead the way, we all rise together. This isn't just about pride, it's about power, the kind that we can all build together. And that future, it doesn't happen alone. It takes partnerships, the right ones, of course. Not the only ones that show up for the pictures, although they are awesome, but the ones who stand with us in action. And that's what Brandon's here to talk about. Thank you.
You've just heard the heart of our community and the power of our vision. Now here's the question. Who's ready to build with us? At NAHREP, we're not just hosting events, we're creating pipelines. Pipelines of Latino talent. Pipelines of wealth building. Pipelines of trust and transformation. And we're looking for partners who align with that mission. When you partner with us, you're not buying a table, you're building into the future. You're standing with a movement rooted in family, entrepreneurship, and equity. And you're making your brand a part of a story that really matters. We hold ourselves to high standards, and we expect the same from our partners. This is what values alignment, long-term commitment, and showing up beyond the surface. If you believe in building generational wealth, if you believe that representation matters, if you believe that it makes sense to support a data-driven investment, then you belong in this room with us. Let's grow together. Let's lead together. And let's make Minnesota a national model for what's possible when business and community are in alignment. And so, if you're interested in partnering with us here in the Twin Cities, we've made it easy for you. Scan the QR code on your table. There's a quick form you can fill out to let us know if you're interested in being a part of this mission. Or if you prefer, come and find one of our board members after the program. We'd love to connect and explore how we can build something meaningful together. Now, to take us into the final stretch of today's program, please help me welcome our very own Natasha Cejudo. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little bit shorter. Thank you, Brandon, for that powerful reminder of what's possible when our partners move with purpose. To close out the program portion of our afternoon, I have the incredible honor of introducing someone whose vision has transformed not only this organization, but the way our entire industry sees Latino wealth and leadership. Gary Acosta is the co-founder and CEO of NAHREP. He is a nationally recognized entrepreneur, speaker, and investor, and the driving force behind groundbreaking initiatives like Hispanic Wealth Project, Latitude Ventures, and most recently, NAHREP at Avance Global, with registration just launched within the last 24 hours. And yes, that link can be found, you guessed it, on your QR code right on your table. And the common thread across all of Gary's work, it's focused on expanding opportunity and rewriting the narrative for our community. Not someday, but now. And today is especially meaningful. 2025 marks NAHREP's 25th anniversary, 25 years of building generational wealth, and I just lost my place, growing leaders and creating systems where our community can truly thrive. To have Gary here with us in Minnesota, in person, during this milestone year, is something truly, truly special. As you listen, I encourage that you start to think about what questions you might have, because after Gary's remarks, we'll open the floor for a Q&A session, and how spectacular is that? Please help me give a warm welcome to Gary Acosta, who will be sharing national insights, new opportunities, and the vision that ties it all together. Incredible to have this conversation. We're all very excited. So let's get started. So we've seen 9 consecutive years of growth in Hispanic homeownership. That's impressive. But in a market that's often stacked against first-time homebuyers and working-class families, it's not easy. So what's driving this momentum? And just as importantly, where is it most at risk?
We still had a substantial net gain in home ownership. In fact, more than any other demographic. I think it was close to 300,000 net new homeowners. But the Latino household formation number, which is the denominator in that percentage, actually increased by almost 700,000, which was also faster than any other demographic in the country. And what that tells us is that these numbers are likely to continue, because there's probably no other data point that is more indicative of what is going to happen in the future than household formation. So you see people forming households, and within a few years, a lot of those households become homeowners. So yeah, now there are headwinds out there, and we're all experiencing it. Affordability has probably challenged more than it's any time in recent history, and this is across the country. But that's primarily a factor of inventory and the lack of inventory that we have in the marketplace. And there's no silver bullet to fix that quickly, except to try to build more stock out there, more affordable housing stock. You asked the question also is, why has the Hispanic rate continued at a pace that is faster than any other demographic? I think it's 2 primary reasons. One, we are the youngest demographic in the country, if you don't know that. Our average age of a Latino in this country is right around 30 years old. which is 10 years younger than the overall population and 15 years younger than the non-Hispanic white population. And we're just starting to enter into those prime home buying years. I think the second primary reason why that number keeps increasing is just that sort of intangible factor, the passion that Latinos have for homeownership. I mentioned earlier that we are a very family-centric community, and the home is the centerpiece of the family experience. So it's a very high priority for us. And so that priority tends to create this resilience factor. We just seem to find a way, whether we need to partner with another family member or do something really creative to be able to purchase that first home. The Latino community tends to be more resilient than other populations. Another thing that I think is relevant, especially here in Minnesota, is Latinos also have demonstrated a willingness to migrate to areas where there are jobs and where there are more affordable housing or more affordable homes. So if you look at where those numbers have increased the most, it's not really in Southern California, it's not really in South Florida, it's really happening in the Midwest and in the southern regions of the country more than anywhere else. And Latinos are just willing to go where those opportunities are.
Fantastic. Do I have a mic yet? I do? Okay, awesome. So let's stay on barriers for a moment because it's important. And when I was driving here today, I was listening to NPR, and the NAR, so the National Association of Realtors, just released a report, maybe today, saying I believe they're looking at home prices and affordability. And they said they've taken the average homeowner or person buyer who's earning about $75,000 a year has a chance of getting maybe 1 in 3 houses. And given the inventory challenge, it's more than interest rates or credit score, structural. So what do you see as more persistent barriers that are specifically affecting the Latino community? It is all that. But is there something more, and where is NAHREP making the most impact in breaking those barriers down?
So what are barriers that are uniquely Latino is a question. So I can think of one off the top of my head, and it has to do with mortgage qualification. So Latinos are also twice as likely, almost twice as likely as the overall population to own a small business, to have a small business in a household. And those of us that are in the lending side of the business, we know that it is typically more difficult to qualify self-employed individuals for a number of reasons. So we have been advocating as an organization to government entities like the FHFA and FHA to start to modernize their underwriting criteria to take into consideration cash flow and other metrics that are, we believe, more indicative of borrowers' capacity to be able to afford a mortgage. With the CFPB's regulatory apparatus being much more focused on ability to repay, which I don't think is a bad thing, I think is a good thing, but the unintended consequences of those regulations have made it more difficult for self-employed borrowers. And I think that in this economy that we're in today, or as some people call it, the gig economy, it doesn't just affect Latinos, it affects the overall economy. People just earn money differently than they did 50 years ago. And I think it's time that our mortgage systems start to catch up to that. But that is one that disproportionately affects Latinos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in our community, we see a lot of interesting entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship that came from the originating country.
I think Latinos invented the gig economy.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was getting at. Speaking of the gig economy and Hispanic wealth, let's talk about the Hispanic Wealth Project, which set a bold goal, which you just said earlier today. The goal of tripling Latino household wealth was achieved. It's fantastic. And what's still missing in the way institutions or policy are tackling Latino wealth building?
Well, I think one of the challenges we have with Latino wealth, and we look at the NAHREP 10, right? One of the 10 principles is to know your net worth, right? Because you can't improve what you don't measure. It's a fundamental of business. Well, unlike home ownership, where the Census Bureau produces data on home ownership nationwide, broken down demographically, and we get that information. We can see how Latinos are faring from a homeownership standpoint. There isn't anything equivalent when it comes to wealth. Now, the Federal Reserve does produce a report broken down demographically, but only once every 3 years instead of once every quarter like we get it for home ownership. So the first thing we tried to address when it came to the Hispanic Wealth Project is try to put more consistent data about household wealth. It's not easy. We have to use different metrics and different resources to try to accumulate that information, but acquiring a better understanding of how Latinos acquire wealth, where there are gaps, what we need to do better, what we need to focus on more as a community is the first step in improving household wealth, just creating that knowledge and that recognition of those issues. You know, one of the things that kind of stands out, and one of the areas where we didn't meet that goal, so we did triple, Latinos did triple their wealth, but the primary source of that was home equity, which is great, but we had sub-goals underneath that tripling of that overall wealth. And one of them was to substantially increase Latino participation in non-cash financial assets such as retirement accounts and brokerage accounts and so forth. We only ticked up that number a tiny bit. So for whatever reason, there is still a knowledge gap or just an aversion for Latinos investing in stocks and bonds and even retirement accounts. So we're trying to figure out why that is, and I think knowledge is a big part of it. But I also think, and this is through our survey work, that the nomenclature that's used is part of the issue. When we did a survey a couple years ago asking people about their participation in retirement accounts, one of the responses we got is, of course I don't have a retirement account because I never intend to retire, right? Which is a common sort of perspective for Latinos in particular. We have a worker's mentality. We don't stop working. So using different nomenclature can get a different response sometimes. Think of estates, an estate, people don't think about things in those terms. So we have to use better nomenclature that connects with people in the way that I think is productive.
Thank you. Let's talk about venture capital.
Yeah.
We'll shift to entrepreneurship. Well, it didn't really shift, we just came off of it. You co-founded Latitude Ventures, and it's now the newly launched Avance, so, which has statements on Latino-led companies, that the big statement is that they're not just viable, but we are vital. And what's working inside that fund, and what message do you want to send to investors who still don't see the opportunity with us?
I mean, that's a great question, a great point. You know, when we set up the fund, like I said, there was a lot of skepticism about whether or not it made sense to invest in Latino-led startups. Are there really Latino-led startups out there? People actually told me to my face, you're going to have a hard time finding companies to invest in. That has not been our problem. We don't have enough capital to invest in the companies that we want to invest in. But one of the things that we really wanted to understand or get good at was try to acquire a better understanding of the unique business needs of Latino startups and entrepreneurs. And what I mean by that is that as we started to make investments and evaluate a lot of the companies that are out there, we started to see common trends within Latino entrepreneurs, things that were both positive and things that were less positive. For example, we found that a number of the companies we invested in hired engineering talent, because there are a lot of them are tech companies, engineering talent nearshore, more frequently than the overall population. And they were able to do it in a much more seamless fashion because a lot of them had connections back to Colombia or northern Mexico where they come from. So their ability to be able to vet and hire and work with on an efficient basis with engineering talent, which is very expensive, they had a competitive advantage in that point. So we thought, okay, how do we double down on that? How do we leverage that even further? We also found that Latino-led startups, they were great in creating products. They had good ideas, but for whatever reason, their go-to-market strategies tend to be a little bit weaker than some of the others. So we, as a fund, recognize, okay, having resources within our fund, not just to invest in these companies, but also support them from a go-to-market standpoint was something that made sense. So this is what we tried to learn, right? It's not just about culture, which is very important. It's not just about it being an underserved market, which it is. It's also acquiring an understanding of the unique business needs that Latino-led startups and companies in general tend to have, so that we can be a better supporting factor out there in the marketplace.
It sounds like you're on the forefront of something amazing and very exciting.
We're going to find the next Latino Google, the next Latino-led Microsoft.
All right, now let's talk about Avance. You and Nelly Galan launched Avance Global to spotlight Latino leadership and culture. How does this platform build on what you started with Latitude, and what's the deeper impact you're aiming for economically, culturally, and maybe even politically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had 7 successful years in Latitude, and I partnered with Sol Trujillo. And if you don't know who Sol is, Sol was the very first US-born Latino to be the CEO of a Fortune 200 company when he was the CEO of US West Telecom. So he took a very important role, was very successful in that role, and then he ran the largest telecom in Europe, and then he after that ran the largest telecom in Australia. So he's, I'm pretty sure, the only human being that has run 3 $50 billion market cap companies in 3 different continents, right? So this is not, you know, your typical guy. He's a prolific individual. And he has a very specific thesis that I learned a great deal from. And that is, as a former CEO, the way to get things done, we talked a little bit earlier when Pete was on stage about companies not really getting it yet and not really investing enough in the Latino marketplace. Well, Sol believes that you close that gap by having very direct conversations with other CEOs, with the national media, and you share data with them. And that is going to have a bigger and faster impact than almost anything else that you can do. That really, I think, opened our eyes, opened doors, got us in rooms that were, you know, inaccessible to us in the past. The next iteration for us, going from there to Avance Global, is now to take that to the masses, right? Take that information and not just share it with CEOs, but start to deploy the information, the knowledge, the resources, the capital that we now have access to the grassroots, to the individuals, to the practitioners out there. So what you're going to see with Avance Global is a much more scaled effort. Our goal is to make that the South by Southwest, turn it into a 100,000-person event, a marketplace where people go and they find their next business partner, they find access to capital, they find all the things necessary to build great companies.
Thank you. Another amazing thing. And now we're moving on to the Latino brand and branding, which is my favorite thing, as you all know. So let's talk about the story we're telling or not telling. Your series, The Latino Brand, pushes us to rethink how Latinos are seen in America. So how do we start closing the gap between who we are and how we are perceived, excuse me? And what's the role of professionals like the ones in this room in that shift?
Well, you know, one of the things that I've come to dislike, and it comes up every election season, is that we're not a monolithic community, right? We're a fragmented community. And everybody likes to say that, and they always act surprised when, you know, that is illustrated in different ways. We know we're not a monolithic community. We come from different countries. We have, you know, different experiences. We have different political biases. That's not what makes us, that's not news to me. What would be news if we started acting a little bit more like a community and recognizing that our commonalities actually are more important, more prevalent than our differences. We embrace those differences. Like, being united doesn't mean that we all think the same or we all vote the same. It just means that we share common values, we have common experiences, and we have each other's back as a community. You know, one of the things that I said at the United Nations speech was that, you know, those big $1 trillion numbers, our purchasing power, our Latino GDP, Latinos purchasing homes in big numbers, they don't really matter a whole lot at the end of the day. It's kind of like saying people with brown hair have a $10 trillion GDP. It's like, who cares, right? If that community can't be mobilized, if that community isn't united around a few fundamental values, then it doesn't matter. So to me, this is all an evolution, right? So we went from this emerging market that nobody really understood or recognized or invested in, to an emerged market that we don't have to sell that as much, to now a market that understands its power as a united force. And that's the next goal for us as a community. And that's going to take us into the end zone, I believe. Because I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons why NAHREP has been uniquely successful out there in the marketplace, maybe where other Latino organizations have not been as successful, is we focus on the things that we all care about, right? Latinos, especially Latino immigrants, don't come to this country because they like our food or our music or the cultural elements here in the United States. They come for one reason and one reason only, and that's economic opportunity. It's the opportunity to purchase a home, the opportunity to create a better life for ourselves and our families, right? That is common across the board. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what political party you're a part of. You all share that aspiration. We all share that aspiration. That commonality is what keeps an organization like NAHREP sticky. And extending that to the broader community, to other sectors of the marketplace is our goal. And that's what we think Proximo at Avance Global could end up being.
Thank you. One last question before we open it up. Representation isn't just symbolic. It shapes what becomes possible. How does Latino visibility in media and business translate into real opportunities, and where are you seeing momentum that gives you hope?
I'll tell this story, right? So I'll start with the last part of it, where you say, where do I see momentum that gives us hope? When I started NAHREP 25 years ago, one of the first things that I did is I went on a listening tour. And I went and visited some of the biggest companies servicing the housing industry. And I said in those rooms basically the same thing. And that is, there's this tidal wave of Latino home buyers coming around the corner. And your company needs to prepare for that. You need to hire the right people. You need to have the right products and services. You need to learn how to market to this community. And in every one of those meetings, everybody nodded their head in agreement. And in the months and years that passed, none of those companies did anything different than they were already doing. And I'll tell you when things started to change. They started to change when a few companies, a few of them were Latino-led, started to achieve scale and started to take market share away from these bigger companies. And when that happened, the conversation about the Latino community inside of those companies went from this is the right thing for us to do, to a war room conversation that said, if we don't figure this out, we're going to continue to lose market share and some of us are going to lose our jobs. That is what I think the power of entrepreneurship can do. So, as I said before, the narrative about the Latino community is, you can't put a price and you can't put a value on that. It has intangible impact on so many different things. So controlling that narrative is critical to us. Having more influence over that story and how we're characterized in the media, I think is going to end up moving in the right direction as we see more entrepreneurs in the media space emerge that come from our community and start to achieve scale. Once we start to see, our versions of media disseminate into the marketplace, things will change. I've said all along that Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey did more for Latinos, not for Latinos, for blacks in the entertainment industry than 50 years worth of political advocacy. The same will happen for us.
That's very exciting. Thank you, and super inspirational. And now we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Do I have anyone with a question? You want to raise your hand? Julissa and Missy have mics. Anyone? You're all going to be shy? Oh, there we go.
thanks again for the honor and the opportunity to have this kind of, and I like the way you had put it earlier today, changing the word from access to connection.
Yep.
Right? For us to be able to have this close of a connection to somebody who is literally on the world stage. But if after 25 years, what if you were to start it all over again today? If you were to start all over again today, what, with the technology, with the connection, what would you do the same or even differently?
It's not a question that I haven't thought about in my mind. As all of these things have sort of evolved, and it really has become an organization and a platform that's all about the prosperity of Latinos in this country. The reality is, if I were to do it all again, I probably would still start with real estate and home ownership, because it is the cornerstone of prosperity in this country. It is the gateway to the middle class. And I would say that business ownership is the path to prosperity at the end of the day. So I don't think those two things would change a whole lot. I think one of the things that we do well at NAHREP is that we're not afraid every so often to challenge ourselves and to question ourselves. When the Great Recession hit in 2008, that was a devastating time for all of us, certainly for us at NAHREP. But I remembered a line that stuck with me back then, and that is, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? So we thought, okay, so how do we take advantage of this crisis? And it made us sort of think about, knowing what we know now, if we had known that 10 years ago, what would we have done differently? And it really guided us to restructure the organization in a way that I think positioned it for growth and to become the force that it is today. We're going through that process again right now, because I think it is one of those sort of inflection points in the country that's going to force us all to kind of rethink and reinvent who we are in the marketplace. But whenever there's change, especially massive change, there's massive opportunity, and I think there's great opportunity for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, thank you for being here with us. It's an honor to all of us, and we are lucky to have you here. I have a question regarding the opportunities that come ahead. What sectors or initiatives do you believe are the most promise for the Latino economic empowerment?
Well, you guys saw my Latino brand, video series. I just did one on AI. And I know everybody's talking about AI, but I characterized it maybe a little bit differently in a way that I think hopefully connects with people. I remember maybe 20, 25 years ago when our technology in this country or in the world was moving from wired technology to wireless technology. And believe it or not, that was a big thing 20 years ago. And I read an article, and I think it might have been Forbes magazine or one of those big financial magazines. It said that third world countries and emerging countries around the world would have a chance to collapse timeframes, because unlike the United States, that had a very deep investment in wired technology, like fiber optics and so forth, meant billions and trillions of dollars in all of that. It would have to undo all of that infrastructure, whereas emerging companies would not have to undo anything. They can move directly to wireless technology, and that was going to create an opportunity for them to close the gap economically. I think the same thing is out there for AI. AI is going to change the way we do everything. And I think it gives us, as a Latino population who is younger and tends to adopt to new technologies faster than other segments of the population, an opportunity to close those gaps out there. So I don't think we can underestimate what AI is going to do for us as an economy and the opportunity that potentially it has for us as Latinos in the marketplace. That really stands out more than anything else. The other thing that I'll say that has really changed our mindset as an organization
is we kept sort of talking about the family element as it pertained to NAHREP and the Latino community in particular. And we asked ourselves, why aren't we doing more to engage the families of our members? And this year at Avance Global, for the very first time, we will have a track specifically for the adult children of attendees. Well, they'll actually have content that's relevant to them. A lot of these kids are going to be taking over the family business in a few years, and so there's going to be real content and dialogue taking place that I think will be helpful. But most importantly, we want them to connect with each other, to start building connections around the country with their peers, to start to embrace their culture a little bit, but also to find their own fraternity or sorority inside of our organization. We think that could be really powerful. The Jewish community has been doing this for generations. They have their summer camps up in the Catskills, and they do it because they want to disseminate cultural information and build links with their young people to their culture, but mostly to connect their kids to each other so they can find their future business partners, so they can find lifelong friends, so they preserve that sense of community. We've never had that. And for the first time, we're going to try to incorporate that in our national conference. So I hope you guys can be a part of that.
We have time for one more question. Okay, here.
Hi, I'm Ivan. I'm a 19-year-old realtor.
Awesome.
So one of my goals is to inspire also the Hispanic community, especially with the youth, the adults, young adults coming in. And I was wondering, like, how do you go about that? You know, a lot of Hispanics were, I guess, my age, were like, hey, how come you're not doing this, like, construction-wise, or, you know, like this and that. Basically saying I got, like, soft hands. and I was wondering, like, how do you think I should go about that? And then trying to help them, like, grow or aim for higher.
I mean, I don't know exactly, you know, I'm not young anymore, but I do think let me just say one thing that maybe you don't know, and I don't know if this helps you or not, but there is a homeownership gap between Latinos and non-Latinos. There is one age block where Latinos actually have a higher homeownership rate than the overall population. You know what that is? 18 to 21. 18 to 21-year-olds own homes within the Latino community, which is not a high number, but it's higher than the overall average. So I think the youth movement within the Latino community is just around the corner for us. That gives me a lot of reason to be proud of your soft hands. It means that you're onto something great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this incredible conversation.
My pleasure.
Such an honor. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. All right, friends, before we officially wrap up, I want to thank you all again for showing up. If you were here when Pedro Lerma was here, he mentioned imposter syndrome, but I want to invite you to really take ownership for the room that's full of power here today. I'm excited to see what this energy does moving forward, and in fact, I would love to carry that energy next door right after this. We do have to be out here promptly at 2 o'clock, but thank you to our amazing friends at Wells Fargo. Yes. Lake Monster Brewing next door will be opening their doors a little early for us, so there will be food and drinks, and it'll be a perfect space to keep connecting and building on the momentum from today. So before we head over, just a couple of final things. By now, I hope you have noticed the QR codes on your tables. If you haven't scanned it yet, go ahead and please do that right now. And if you really want a gold star, go ahead and bookmark it. Here's what you're gonna find. First, we want to keep putting on impactful events just like this one, and your feedback helps us grow. So please take a moment to fill out the event survey and let us know what you think. And next, you're gonna see the link to the NAHREP 10. It's our guiding principles for building wealth and leadership and legacy. So if you've never read through them, just take a moment, and here's a little happy hour challenge. Pick one that speaks to you and choose the principle you want to focus on and share it with somebody while you're having a drink next door. Finally, don't miss the link to the State of Hispanic Homeownership Report. All the stats you heard today, they come straight from this report, and it's an incredible tool giving us data, language, and insights to support the work we're doing here together. It's honestly a huge asset for any of you to use moving forward when you're presenting, when you're meeting other businesses. It's just so full of really amazing, amazing information. So before I officially let you go, I want to give one final huge thank you to Mr. Rick Aguilar for the years of support that he has given NAHREP and for helping bring this event to life. All right, I am done holding all of you hostage. Gracias por estar aquí. Let's keep growing the Latino brand and building Minnesota's future juntos. See you at the happy hour.